My name is Erin Callahan, and I used to believe love meant paying for it. At 32, I've spent a lifetime fixing other people's mistakes, balancing their debts, patching their roofs, and pretending it all didn't hurt. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, the kind of place where neighbors wave but keep score, where family dinners feel warm until someone mentions money. For years, I told myself this was what good daughters did. I covered my father Frank's medical bills after his heart surgery, $15,000 gone in one night. I smiled when he said, "You saved me, kid," even though he never mentioned paying me back. I paid my sister Tara's college tuition $10,000 a year, 3 years straight, because Mom said she had potential. I refinished the family's storm-beaten roof while my own apartment ceiling leaked. And when a Chicago accounting firm offered me $85,000 a year and a future, I turned it down. "Family needs you here," Mom said. So I stayed. My mother, Maggie Callahan, calls it devotion. My friends call it foolish. Jenna Whitmore, my oldest friend, once told me, "You're running their lives like a spreadsheet that only bleeds your ink." I laughed it off. But that night, staring at my bare apartment walls, the words stuck. I thought there would be gratitude, maybe love. But all I got was expectation, the kind that grows heavy and silent until it becomes your identity. Tonight, though, feels different. We're sitting around the oak table I paid to refinish, its surface gleaming under the chandelier light. Tara's wearing new diamond earrings, ones I didn't know she could afford. Mom's fussing with napkins, Dad's nursing his drink. Quiet, but watchful. Something's coming. Frank clears his throat. That sound always means trouble. "We've decided," he says, eyes steady, voice clipped. "The house and our savings, they'll go to Tara. She deserves a chance to build her business." The words land like glass breaking inside my chest. Maggie nods without looking at me. "You're stable, Erin. You've got a good job. Tara just needs help getting started." Stable. The word burns. It sounds like replaceable. I stare at the table's polished grain, the same one I spent weekends sanding and staining. My reflection trembles in its surface. I want to say something, anything, but my throat closes around the truth that they've mistaken sacrifice for safety, devotion for duty. Tara smiles, tucking her hair behind one jeweled ear, basking in their approval. The room feels smaller now, the air thick with betrayal. I lift my glass, just to have something to hold. The rim cuts cold against my lip, anchoring me in place. So this is what it feels like, I think, to realize you were never family, just their funding plan. Outside, the Nebraska wind rattles the window. Inside, no one notices the silence swallowing me whole. I don't shout, I don't cry. I just sit there, watching the family I built give everything I earned to someone who never paid for anything, and something inside me quiet, fragile, and faithful starts to break. The night after that dinner, I couldn't sleep. The chandelier light from earlier still burned behind my eyes, every reflection of it a reminder of what I'd lost. I kept hearing Dad's voice. "The house and our savings go to Tara." It looped in my head like a cruel accounting error I couldn't fix. I sat at my desk long past midnight, flipping through old receipts, each one a record of my devotion. $15,000 for Dad's surgery, $30,000 for Tara's tuition, $8,000 for the roof. I ran my fingers along the faded ink, as if touching the numbers could somehow bring back what they'd taken from me. Each figure wasn't just money, it was time, breath, and belief. When Dad had his heart attack, I'd wired the payment before sunrise. Mom cried through the phone, thanking me like it was temporary. It wasn't. The debt became a pattern, a silent agreement that I'd always be there. When Tara wanted a business degree, they said it was an investment. I told myself it was love, but investments are supposed to return something. This one only left me empty. I remember her graduation, Tara in her white dress, tossing her cap while I stood behind the camera. The invisible sister. She hugged Mom and Dad first. I paid for the cap, the gown, the celebration dinner, and the apartment deposit she needed after. She didn't thank me. She just said, "You make it look easy." It wasn't easy. It was exhausting. And I let it happen. 2 summers ago, when that storm ripped the shingles off the family house, Mom called again, panic in her voice. "We'll lose everything if we don't fix it." I worked overtime, ate ramen for weeks, and handed her $8,000. I never even drove past to see it, but I could picture it, my money sitting on that roof, keeping them dry while I barely kept my lights on. The Chicago offer still haunted me. $85,000 a year, a real office with windows, a chance to be someone outside of the helpful daughter. I turned it down before they even asked. I told myself I was doing the right thing, but tonight, I know better. Each dollar I gave wasn't kindness, it was permission. I'd taught them to expect me to save them, and now they believed that was my purpose. Sitting in the dark, I finally see the truth. The family I kept afloat was never drowning. They were comfortable watching me sink. A week after that dinner, the anger settled into something colder clarity. I moved through my days like a ghost, answering work emails, balancing other people's ledgers while mine bled dry. Every transaction I touched reminded me of home, of how easily numbers could erase gratitude. I told myself I was done giving, but part of me still checked my phone each morning, waiting for Mom's next request. Instead, it was Jenna Whitmore who called. Her tone was different, low, careful, the kind she used when bad news was coming. "Can we meet?" she asked. We chose a small cafe downtown, the kind where the smell of burnt espresso sticks to your clothes. When I saw her face, I knew it wasn't gossip. It was warning. She slid her phone across the table. On the screen glowed a scanned bank notice, my parents' address. The family house. Jenna's voice dropped. Tara's been taking out loans under their names. She used the house as collateral. The words hit harder than the dinner ever did. My first instinct was disbelief, then fury, then something worse, recognition. Of course she did. Tara never thought rules applied to her. She just smiled, promised. And someone else paid. I read the notice again, tracing my parents' names printed beneath the loan number. "They don't know," Jenna said softly. "One of my friends at the loan office sent this to me. She thought you should see it before it gets worse." I felt my stomach twist, that familiar weight pressing against my ribs. All those years I'd been saving them from storms, and now my sister had built one from lies. Driving to my parents' house, the Nebraska sky hung heavy and gray. Maggie was in the kitchen when I walked in, stirring tea like nothing was wrong. "You look tired," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I set my phone on the counter, screen glowing with proof. "Did you know Tara mortgaged the house?" Her spoon stopped mid-stir. The silence stretched thin. "She wouldn't, she's just ambitious," she said, but her voice cracked. "She's reckless," I snapped. "You've been letting her gamble everything we built." Mom's eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. "If she fails, I'll feel like I failed as a mother." That sentence broke something in me, the way she said, not we. I stared at her, realizing that every sacrifice I made wasn't for family. It was for a fantasy she refused to let die. When I left the house, the wind cut through my coat. The world looked the same, but I wasn't. For the first time, I understood that love without accountability isn't love at all, it's debt, and I was done paying it. The next morning, I woke to a message from Mom. Just 4 words. The house payment's due, no apology, no mention of what I'd shown her the night before. It read like a command, a reflex born of habit. For a moment, my thumb hovered over the screen, ready to respond the way I always had, with a quick transfer and a quiet sigh. Then I stopped. I typed back one sentence. My pulse steady. "That's not my responsibility." The silence that followed was louder than any argument we'd ever had. All day, the guilt clawed at me. It had been my compass for so long that ignoring it felt like walking blindfolded. Every voice in my head whispered what good daughters do. They step in, they sacrifice, they fix what's broken. But another voice knew, fragile, defiant, answered back. And who fixes you that night? I unplugged my phone, the first real act of rebellion in my life. The vibration of missed calls faded into quiet. I sat by the window, watching the winter wind scrape against the glass. Outside, Omaha looked small rows of houses with lights that flickered like tiny apologies. I thought about every time I'd rescued them the bills, the tuition, the roof, and realized it had never been enough. There was always another crisis waiting. Maybe the problem wasn't that I gave too little. Maybe it was that I gave at all. When my phone finally buzzed again, I didn't look. I let it ring until the sound disappeared, somewhere between the last call and the next. I understood something simple and devastating love shouldn't feel like debt collection. I closed my eyes, breathing in the quiet. The world didn't end. The roof didn't cave in. No one knocked at my door demanding I save them. For the first time in years, the only thing I had to carry was my own peace. And that, I realized, was worth more than everything I'd ever paid for. A week passed before they showed up. It was Sunday evening, the kind of quiet that feels earned. I was folding laundry, the small domestic proof that life could exist without them, when a knock thundered through my apartment door. I knew that sound. It carried Dad's impatience, Mom's desperation, and Tara's chaos all tangled together. When I opened the door, the three of them stood there like a portrait of regret. Maggie clutched a folder of bank notices. Her hands trembled so hard the papers fluttered like weak wings. Frank loomed behind her, shoulders squared in authority he no longer owned. Tara crossed her arms, chin high, anger wrapped around entitlement. Mom spoke first, voice cracking. "Aaron, please, the bank's calling. We're out of time." Her words came fast, practiced. I could almost see the script plead first, guilt second. I leaned against the doorframe, calm but cold. "You should call Tara's lender, not me." Tara's jaw clenched. "You're betraying us." "You think you're better than your own family?" I laughed, the sound harsh in the narrow hallway. "No, Tara. I'm just finally learning where family ends and survival begins." Dad stepped forward, the weight of his stare pressing against mine. "You're not the daughter we raised," he said, voice low, final. That one hurt, but not the way he expected. It felt like freedom disguised as condemnation. "You raised me to save everyone but myself," I said. "That lesson's over." Maggie reached out, fingers trembling. "Please, honey, just this once. You can fix it." I looked at her hand, the same one that signed every check I ever wrote. "No, Mom, you already decided who deserved everything. Let her fix it." Tara's eyes flashed, defiance cracking into fear. "You'll regret this when the bank takes everything." I met her stare, steady. "You already took everything that mattered." For a moment, no one breathed. The hallway hummed with the sound of 1,000 unsaid apologies. Then I stepped back and closed the door. Their muffled voices spilled through the wood, pleading, accusing, breaking. But I didn't listen. On the other side, my heart pounded steady, certain. For the first time in my life, I didn't owe them anything. And the quiet that followed wasn't loneliness. It was liberation. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. Omaha is small, and the Callahans' drama traveled faster than truth. Within days, I could feel eyes on me at the grocery store, hear my name hushed over checkout counters. The story had changed. Tara made sure of that, on her social media. I was the villain, the selfish daughter who abandoned her parents, the cold sister who let her family lose their home. At first, I tried to ignore it, but then a client emailed, politely reconsidering our contract. My reputation, the one I'd built through years of work, was unraveling because of her lies. Mom called that night, her voice colder than the Nebraska wind. People are talking. Aaron, you need to fix this. Fix this. As if I hadn't spent my whole life doing exactly that. I hung up before she could finish. The next day, an email from Dad arrived formal. Cruel. Your actions have disgraced this family. Actions. Not theirs. Mine. The irony almost made me laugh. I stood by my window, watching the city lights blur through frost. Maybe they'd never love me for who I was, only for what I could give. And now that I'd stopped giving, they were rewriting the story to survive it. But lies can't stand forever. Truth, like winter, has a way of clearing what doesn't belong. I didn't know how yet, but I knew their storm would turn. And when it did, I'd still be standing. It happened on a Tuesday morning, the kind that smelled of burnt coffee and rain. I was deep in spreadsheets when the elevator dinged, and a hush fell over the office. I looked up, and there they were, Frank, Maggie, and Tara Callahan, standing in the doorway of my accounting firm like ghosts who refused to stay buried. Every head turned. My colleagues froze mid-keystroke. The air tightened. My stomach dropped. Not from fear, but from disbelief that they'd bring their chaos here into the only space I'd built that was truly mine. Mom stepped forward first, clutching a thick folder, her voice low but sharp. We need to talk. Aaron, you can't keep ignoring us. I straightened, smoothing my blazer, every inch of me calm though my pulse thundered. I'm not ignoring you, I said. I'm choosing peace. Tara scoffed, her voice loud enough for the entire office. Peace. You're hiding behind your fancy job while our family falls apart. The words cracked through the room. Drawing whispers. I met her glare head on. Our family didn't fall apart. Tara, you set it on fire. Dad slammed a hand against my desk, eyes flashing. Enough. We're losing everything, and you're sitting here unmoved. I pushed the chair back, rising to face him. I'm unmoved because I've already given everything. Every dollar, every hour, every dream I had, and it was never enough. Mom's hands trembled as she opened the folder, spreading overdue notices across my desk like a funeral display. You have the means to help, she pleaded. Please, Aaron, don't let us lose the house. My gaze fell on the paper's numbers, interest rates, signatures, my parents' names beside Tara's debt. I exhaled slowly. Tara used the house as collateral. Tara can fix it. Tara's eyes widened, her bravado cracking. I was trying to build something, she muttered, voice thin. You wouldn't understand. I almost pitied her, but pity was another currency I couldn't afford. You built a disaster, I said softly, and you expected me to clean it up. Dad's tone dropped to that cold register he used when he wanted control. You're choosing yourself over family. That line, once a weapon, now felt like a release. For the first time, I said, I am. Mom's face crumpled. Tara's tears glimmered but never fell. Around us, the office stayed still, co-workers pretending not to watch a family come apart. I gathered the papers, placed them neatly back in the folder, and handed it to Mom. I have work to do, I said, steady. Please leave. They stood frozen, waiting for me to break. I didn't. Finally. Dad turned away, muttering something about shame. Tara lingered last, her voice barely a whisper. You'll regret this. Aaron, I met her eyes, calm as stone. No, Tara, you will. When the elevator doors closed behind them, the silence felt enormous, raw, holy, and earned. I sank back into my chair, my hands trembling with something that wasn't fear anymore. It was freedom. For the first time, the weight I'd carried all my life was gone. By the end of that week, the story broke wide open. The Omaha Herald ran a small headline that spread like wildfire. Local family loses home after hidden debts exposed. They didn't need to name the Callahans, everyone knew. In small towns, shame travels faster than truth. At first, I didn't react. I read the article in silence. sipping cold coffee. The hum of my refrigerator louder than the words on the screen. But then I saw it Tara's signature, right beside the foreclosure notice. It was no longer my burden to carry. The truth had done what I couldn't. It had spoken for me. The calls started soon after. People who once whispered behind my back now texted apologies. We didn't know. Erin. She fooled everyone. I didn't reply. Forgiveness wasn't the point. Mom called one evening, her voice small, like a child's. "We're staying with friends," she said. We lost everything. There was no accusation left in her tone, no demand, just defeat. I waited for her to ask for help, but she didn't. "Tara's gone," she added quietly. She left town. I stood by the window, watching the streetlights flicker on across the neighborhood. For the first time, I felt no guilt, no bitterness, only peace. "I'm sorry it came to this," I told her, but it wasn't my fault. Mom didn't argue, just a long breath, the sound of someone realizing too late what love costs when it's one-sided. After the call ended, I looked around my apartment, the walls I painted, the couch I chose, the quiet I built. Everything here was mine. No one could take it. No one could drain it. Outside, the wind swept across the city, sharp and clean. The storm had passed, and I was still standing, for once. That was enough. The weeks after the foreclosure felt strange, like living in a house after everyone's moved out, but the ghosts. Omaha grew colder, quieter. The gossip faded, replaced by the kind of silence that follows truth too heavy to argue with. For the first time, I woke up without checking my phone for someone else's crisis. The air in my apartment felt lighter, freer, still. There were moments when memories crept in Dad's laugh during Sunday barbecues, Mom humming while folding laundry, Tara bragging about plans she'd never finish. Nostalgia is cruel. It edits out the pain and leaves you longing for the version of people who never really existed. I focused on rebuilding my life, one deliberate step at a time. I worked late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My clients, the ones who stayed through the storm, began to trust me again. My boss called me into his office one afternoon, sliding a new contract across the desk, senior accounting manager. I stared at it, half expecting it to disappear. "You've earned it," he said simply. For the first time, success didn't feel like guilt, it felt like mine. That night, I celebrated alone. I ordered takeout, poured a glass of wine, and sat at my kitchen table, the same table I bought after cutting ties with my family. It gleamed softly in the lamplight, its surface unscarred by other people's demands. A week later, a letter arrived, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Tara. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The paper smelled faintly of cheap perfume. "Erin, you were right. I thought I was chasing success, but I was really running from shame. I ruined everything. Mom, Dad, the house. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to start over. I hope someday you can think of me without hate. Tara." I read it twice, then placed it in the drawer beside my bills and bank statements. No tears came, only a strange calm. Maybe this was closure, the kind that doesn't fix what's broken but stops it from bleeding. Later that evening, Mom called again. Her voice was steadier this time, humbled by loss. "We're getting by," she said. "Frank's working odd jobs. We're trying." There was a pause, an opening. "I know it's late, but thank you," she whispered, "for everything you did, even what we didn't see." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Years of resentment, guilt, and denial sat between us, heavy but finally still. "Take care of yourself." "Mom," I said, after the call. I stood at the window, the city lights blinking like quiet witnesses. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't need revenge or validation. The truth had done its work, and I was free. The house was gone. The family I once carried had fallen apart, but I was still here whole, standing on my own foundation, and for the first time, that felt like enough to call home. Spring arrived quietly in Omaha, soft rain washing the winter dust from the streets. I didn't realize how much time had passed until the light began to linger again, gold across my living room walls, warm on the table where everything had changed. My life had settled into something I hadn't known I was allowed to have peace. Mornings came without dread. I brewed my own coffee, answered to no one, and planned for a future that finally belonged to me. Work was steady, and so was my heart. The noise that once filled my head, worry, guilt, obligation had thinned into something like stillness. Sometimes I thought of them Mom, Dad, Tara, but only as you might think of old photographs. They were part of my story, but not the chapter I was in now. I'd stopped waiting for apologies or reconciliation. Forgiveness, I learned, wasn't about letting them back in. It was about letting myself move forward. One evening, I invited Jenna Whitmore over for dinner, the first real guest my apartment had ever seen. She brought wine. I cooked pasta. We ate and laughed under the soft hum of the city outside. When the meal was over, she ran her fingers along the smooth edge of my oak dining table. "It's beautiful," she said. "Where'd you get it?" I smiled. "I built it," I told her. And it was true. Piece by piece, I'd sanded, shaped, and stained it with my own hands on weekends when the silence felt too big. It had become more than furniture. It was proof that something new could rise from what was broken. When Jenna left, I sat alone at that table, tracing the wood grain with my fingertips. It gleamed in the lamplight, steady, solid, mine. Family had once been the house I kept repairing. Now, it was this a home built from my own choices, my own peace. And as the rain tapped against the window, I realized I hadn't lost everything. I'd finally gained myself. Months later, Omaha had bloomed back to life. The air smelled of lilacs and rain-washed pavement, and for once, I felt like I was living inside the season instead of surviving it. My life had narrowed, but it was mine, steady, uncluttered, and quiet in a way that used to scare me. Now, it felt like peace. One Saturday morning, a small envelope appeared in my mailbox. The handwriting was unfamiliar, uneven, careful. Inside was a postcard from a town I didn't recognize, a photo of a diner and a dusty main street. The message was only a few lines. "I found work here. It's not much, but it's honest. I hope you're well. T." I read it twice, then set it on the windowsill beside the little cactus that had somehow survived my neglect. The postcard didn't reopen old wounds. It just confirmed what I already knew. Some love isn't meant to be repaired, only released. Later that day, I drove past the empty lot where my parents' house once stood. Grass had started to grow through the cracks, soft green reclaiming what used to be burden and memory. For a moment, I parked and watched the wind ripple across it like forgiveness. Mom and Dad never reached out again, and I stopped waiting. I'd spent so much of my life measuring love by what I could give. Now, I understood it was what remained when the giving stopped. That night, I sat at my table, the one I built myself, and wrote a letter I'd never send. I thanked them for the lessons, for teaching me where devotion ends and self-worth begins. Then I folded it, placed it in a drawer, and felt lighter for it. Maybe healing isn't loud or cinematic. Maybe it's just a quiet acceptance that love, in its truest form, doesn't ask you to disappear to prove it's real.